Welcome to Good News Rhode Island, the show about Rhode Island, all the people and places and events that are too diverse and wonderful and interesting to mention, but they never get on the front page, so we put them on our front page. Today we're going to be talking to Mark Tabor, who is an amazing jazz pianist, but also a sculptor. And he goes around and finds almost anything in any place and puts it into something wonderful, makes it into something wonderful. So we are in his apartment to celebrate what he has in front of him and the atmosphere that he's made and that we can all make in our homes if we're really creative. So, Mark, thank you so much for talking with us.
You're more than welcome. I'm happy to be on the show.
Well, I've been wanting to talk to you for so long. You have played once for us,
yes,
with poets, but we didn't give you much time to speak, so here we are. So, Mark, when I look around, I think, my heavens, this man had an unusual childhood. Now, maybe that's not something that I should say. I should say this man has an unusual adulthood. But tell me about your childhood and how you got to be this free, to be able to live this way and to enjoy so many different found objects.
I've always found things, and I remember as a kid, even in my room, I wouldn't play with toys, I would tend to arrange them and put them in different arrangements rather than work them around. And I would find things and bring them home. Often my mother would not be too happy with that. But I found this old pump one time, like an old hand pump for a sink. And I thought it was just beautiful. It was rusted. I think there's beauty in rust. And rust it tells its own stories and all of that. And I want to incorporate that in things. So I would just bring them home and then arrange them in certain ways. So
you were raised here in Providence, born in Amesbury, Massachusetts,
yes,
in a rather rural area by the sea, and you came down here to Providence, and having heard a little bit about your life, I realized that you had amazing friends who somehow were drawn to the same kind of music that you were very early on.
That was true, but that was more later on. As I mentioned, my mother specifically grew up in a very musical family. With there were 5 girls, a mother and a father, and they would all play instruments together. They'd work on the same songs. They didn't have a band to go out, but they would play in the house. And when I was very small, of course there was a piano in the house, and whenever my aunts would come over, they would play and sing together, and I would just stand there and be in awe. I thought, oh, God, this is just so beautiful.
They all did it by ear.
Yep. No, they could read music. And I asked to take lessons. I said, I really want to learn how to play, because they could all play. And they let me take piano lessons. Usually kids are made to take piano lessons. I wanted to. And I remember there were days when my mother, like a day like today was beautiful out, she would come downstairs, and if she was upset with me, she'd call me both names. She would say, Mark Tabor, it's a beautiful day out. You're not going to stay here and practice Beethoven all afternoon. You go down to the lot down the street and play baseball with your friends. Ugh. I was not good at baseball, but I kept up with the musical
So you were playing Beethoven and not jazz initially. So you're reading music and learning to move through all of those arpeggios and everything else.
Yes, I did. Yes. I can't do it now, but I was able to. I took about 7 years. Then, like my junior high school, I met a dear friend who lived across an empty lot, and then his house, I went over to his house one time, and his older brother was playing 78s of all these blues people and jazz people. I went, Count Basie and Ellington and Oscar Peterson. I went, I never heard that music. I went, oh my God. It was beautiful. and Thelonious Monk, and I just, for some reason, I just took to it. I couldn't get enough of it. So that was my interest in blues and jazz, and that's how that started. And he actually was a teacher. His name was Louis, and he knew I was interested. So he played a 78 by Coleman Hawkins. He said, now listen to this. Then we'd play it. Then he'd play the same song on another 78 by Ben Webster. And he said, now listen to the difference. Oh, yeah. So he knew I was interested. He took the time with me to really show me the different styles of music and the styles of playing, and especially with the piano players. And I want to say, I had no trouble discerning who was playing the piano. You could walk in and you could definitely tell Count Basie from Duke Ellington, from Thelonious Monk, from all of them were so unique. And I figured too, in those days when I was learning, the cars, the automobiles, were equally unique. Even though they were made by the same companies, it was easy to tell a Buick from an Oldsmobile. But now, if I listen to jazz now, they all pretty much sound the same. They play as many notes as they can with their right hand. And automobiles, I can't tell a Jaguar from a VW. I mean, they just, it all, but back then was the style, which is the point I want to make. And I found it very, very interesting.
So individuation and uniqueness was what taught you, in a way.
Very much so.
And so how did you make the transition between Beethoven and Thelonious Monk, which is a huge jump in my mind?
It is. Thelonious Monk learned classical. He went to the conservatory, and yeah, he had to get all through that classical. Thelonious Monk was very classically influenced. It may not sound that way, but the way he writes is very, there is that influence there. And for me, I stopped taking classical. I'd gone far enough with it, and especially with this interest in jazz. I wasn't anti-classical, but I sure wanted to hear more and more. And it wasn't just the music. There was this creative curtain, if you will, that opened. There was the music, it was the jazz, but also it was literary. Jack Kerouac, Norman Mailer, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, the poets, the authors, the painters. I learned about Picasso, Van Gogh, Max Ernst, and I went, oh my God, there is so much creativity going on. And I just took to all of it. The only things I could really do with any of it was play keyboard. But I realized, there is all this creativity that I couldn't get enough of, and still can't. That's why I keep messing around with things here and pick things up off the street and like to make creative sculptures, if you will. I call them
statements. I mean, they're really statements. They're more than sculptures. Assemblages, yes. So the truth is that you were learning, you were absorbing everything you could possibly find. You were self-educating, and your friends were educating you, and you were probably educating them, although you don't give yourself any credit for that. But in the meantime, school was just a drag.
Yes. I hated it. And I was the guy who, we had a big biology book, and I'd open the biology book, but then I'd have these little paper backs of Duke Ellington written about, I was the guy who sat there reading that, and I didn't do well.
Okay.
And you don't want to know how bad it got.
But your mother understood that somehow you were driven by something completely different than your brother, who was more traditional and wanted the sports and wanted the good grades, etc.
Yep.
But she understood you,
or
your father did.
Yep. I think she did. My dad, I look back, I said, those poor people. I mean, everything was fine with my brother. He was a straight-ahead guy, And then here comes Mark, and I would move my room around constantly. That was another one. At a very young age, I would move my room around. I went to bed
Redecorating.
here. Oh, yeah. And just creative. That's all I could do.
So in the end, did you go to some school for art, or are you
No.
completely, so you're completely self-trained?
Also.
Okay, so you moved to Providence and you basically stayed in Providence, but then you started doing sculptures and you started playing with a group. Tell us about the group.
The first group it was a big name group. Actually, it was with Ken Lyon, and it was called the Tombstone Blues Band. And that we played every Tuesday at Bowie's Tavern, which isn't even there anymore, but we played at Bowie's Tavern on Tuesday nights, and we got better and better, and we ended up opening up for really big names that came through town. I didn't play with that band. We would open up for that
the opener,
band.
yeah.
They like Janis Joplin. I mean, huge. I remember talking with her, and Aerosmith and Canned Heat, and oh my God, it goes on and dozens of these.
So lots of big bands came here to
Oh yeah,
Providence.
they would come through. Yeah,
And they would play in these small bars.
No, they'd be playing at the Civic Center.
Oh.
A lot of them. Janis Joplin was up at the Worcester Centrum, which was a big seating place where they could seat many people.
But you got first-hand hearing then.
Oh, it was wonderful.
And discussion with them.
In a lot of cases, you could.
So did they help you too? I mean, did you ask them questions about your own style?
Yeah, they helped me with their interest in me. And what I really found was like somebody like Janis Joplin, when you talked with her, she was just down to earth as sitting here, you and I talking. No uppity airs at all, and I found that most of these big names were like that. Because they knew who they were, they knew what they were, they had nothing to prove, and they didn't have these huge egos. It'd be funny, you'd be off playing with Queen and these huge groups, and you come back to Providence, and these local groups, man, the egos were sky high. You talk to these bigger people, and they didn't have that. They didn't need that. And that was a big learning thing. There's so much to learn when you're out there playing with people or just listening to them. Big Mama Thornton, who was a blues, wonderful, God bless her, blues woman, she played here at Lupo's. And the dressing room was downstairs, and everybody was already in there, and Big Mama Thornton was holding court. And no one was saying a word, and then I walked in the room, and she said, and you are a very good piano player. I went,
means everything, right?
Oh my God, I'm coming from Big Mama Thornton. I went, wow. I mean, all these things, they add up. I wouldn't trade any of it. And there were a lot of difficult times, of course. Life can be. But as far as the creativity of it, the enjoyment of it, the people I've met along the way has been, but just to sit here and be doing this is fabulous. It's a wonderful experience, and it just keeps going.
Oh, well, thank you. So from each person, you took some encouragement and some new know-how for your own music. Is that right?
Yes, that's
and gradually you developed your own style, and then you had to find groups to play with. Is that right? Or?
Yes, eventually. It took a while because I was always sounding like Thelonious Monk, or I was sounding like Oscar Peterson, or I was sounding like Joe Kelly, and I remember being very frustrated. I said, I want my own style. I thought, well, Mark, you're 16 years old. But to me, I heard, like I mentioned earlier, they were such stylists. I said, I don't have a style. I can sound like all. But eventually, years and years later, you do develop your own style, but you still hear Earl Garner in there, and that's fine.
You do. You hear it, yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So let's move to sculpture for a minute. So you have this idea in your mind when you pick things up, say on the street, somebody leaves out something like this lamp here that you've turned around, or whatever that is, that red.
Yeah.
so you turn that around and you make something out of it. How do you do that? When you see something and suddenly it attracts you, you said one of the things was to paint a picture of somebody, and you picked it up because you wanted it to stay in that family, but they had thrown it out, so you decided to adopt it, essentially. But how do you look at something and then see a sculpture?
When I see something, I see its potential, if it has a potential. I mean, I can't bring everything home that you see on the street, but if I see something, I say, that's interesting. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that, but that could fit on something. It comes home.
So you don't have immediate ideas about what to do with something?
No, and then all of a sudden, if I'm in my workroom, boom, ooh, I can use this if we take that and we take that, and then they start to, in a sense, I say, they start to build themselves. They, they work their way in, or they bring you along on their trip, if you will.
So you put something upside down or sideways, and it works in a new way, and you see new things.
Exactly, and then things will get added to that.
Well, maybe while we're sitting here, we could just talk about, say, the Egyptian area that you have that Bill's already filmed. Tell me about the Egyptian area. Are you interested in Egypt? I see that there's a game that is those little pieces that are down on the bottom that's an Egyptian game, isn't it?
The pieces,
Anyway.
I think, are those little green things.
Yeah.
Those are just little pieces of glass from my prayer pot. I got to show you my prayer pot.
Oh, well, anyway, it looks
But
like a game.
I just put all my Egyptian things together. And there's pyramids there, there's lights there, and that big wheel that's in the back, that's going to be a piece.
Oh, it still has a future.
That's got a future, and I want to put keyboards piano keys all around in a circle. And then that's going to work into something else. So there's a circular keyboard.
Okay, you're going to be able to play it?
No, you wouldn't actually be able to play it, but for me, all these pieces work.
Okay.
You know.
Now tell me about the spaceship that has the keyboard but also the computer pieces.
That I call the Buddha-mobile. And that's two of those chairs they come with these big cushions. They're very relaxed chairs. I found two of them. I put one on top of the other. And you get calls, Juliana. Somebody called me up and said, Mark, there's an organ over on Brook Street. I don't know if you're interested. So I would take a ride over to Brook Street, and there was this organ, and I would take it home. Oh, this is interesting. I got the piano keys. And I often would find computer keyboards.
Sure.
Which, again, said, maybe, I don't know what, but maybe. I had enough keyboards to spell out all the signs of the zodiac on the whole thing. Of course, they're different colors because the keys are different. And that worked its way together. Then I had two little bells. And then I found at the very top there's a red light of an owl, which to me is like a wisdom.
Yes.
And to put that on top, and then two little Buddhas there. And,
they're wine glasses and torches.
Torches, yeah, that's the other part, yeah. And I just picture him sitting in it. If he wants to go forward, he leans forward. If he wants to go up, he'll lean back and then goes up and lefts and rights. But it's more or less a presence of spirituality, and I'm interested in that in all its forms.
So you have many areas that you delve into.
Yes, I think they all have something to say.
Okay, let's talk about Thelonious Monk.
Okay.
So you made this wonderful sculpture, and I wonder if you can describe it and talk about it.
The sculpture I made is called Monk in the Kitchen. A lot of my pieces don't have names, but that does. And I read an article way back. I think it was just like a New York Times magazine. It could have been Downbeat, but it was about Thelonious Monk. He had released an album. And there was a picture of him, and he's sitting in the kitchen. And there was a mention of the kitchen is his favorite room in the house, which is also mine. And here's this baby grand piano in the kitchen with sheet music all over the place. Also, cans of soup. It's in the kitchen. It's a baby grand. So, you know, this is what happens. And I had the same thing at one time. I thought, that is so cool, Monk in the kitchen. So these pieces I found became Monk, and I had such a respect for that. And there was something like Thelonious Monk. You said, oh my God, he is so amazing. And then the kitchen. This is just, you know, a common kitchen.
It's wonderful, but that it has a ironing board. It has a plastic ball. It has notes or hammers from the piano.
Hammers from piano, different keyboards.
And all the tools for the kitchen.
All the tools, yep. You got to make your soup. You got to stir those noodles every now and then.
Typewriter. I mean, seriously.
It was fun to make.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. So.
And you and your husband found it, and that's another story. But that's amazing how that came to go full circle. So I'm very appreciative.
I'm glad things come back to you.
I am too. Thank you.
So near the Egyptian setup sculpture is a black and white sculpture that looks as though it's dedicated to movies.
That's it.
And it's in the kitchen. It's in the kitchen.
It's in the kitchen. That the table it sits on is the table that I sat and ate peanut butter jelly sandwiches on when I was 4 years old. And I just put a black and white tablecloth on it. But like as what happens with the artwork, things happen. Then I had a black and white this, and I had a black and white cat, and then I found a great picture of Duke Ellington wearing a top hat. And there's a picture of Heidi Nurk, who's a singer I'm working with now, and that's black and white. And Greta Garbo. I had these wonderful pictures of Greta Garbo. And to me, color is wonderful, but also black and white speaks its own thing. And I love black and white. And Greta Garbo was a star in the black and white. I mean, the black and white, and in the movies that I didn't have talking yet. The silent movies, and that I wanted black and white to have its own say also. Also, there's a picture of my mom in there, an old black and white picture of my mother in there.
So it's a tribute to history and to cinematography and to life as it is. Yeah.
Well put. Yes, I agree.
Very nice, very nice. Right next to the microwave, so while you're standing there waiting for something to cook, you can be reflective right there.
You can do that, and then right across the other side of the room is Monk in the Kitchen, which is also black and white.
Yes. So they're really good companions.
Yeah, they get along well.
Mark, we're really excited to hear you play. What are you going to play for us?
Well, we've been talking about Thelonious Monk a lot, so let me do something by Thelonious Monk. Called Round Midnight that he wrote with a trumpet player, Cootie Williams. But it's a beautiful set of changes, and I'll try to do what we can fit in a little Errol Garner, because he was a strong influence of mine too. Just a wonderful player.
Okay, and you're going to do some improvisation in the middle of that.
We will be doing that.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. That was around midnight, and this is a thing by Errol Garner. He didn't write it, but it's a beautiful tune, The Way You Look Tonight. I forget what musical it's out of, but it's a gorgeous piece of music.